Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with your favorite time of the week. We are adults. We are here to talk about cool stuff. You are listening to ATACS, episode number 53. I am your host, Paul from Atlanta, and joining me today is Mr. Ryan from New York City. Mr. Ryan, how are you up north?
I am good. I am catching up on things.
Is it warmer there? I know it was cold for a while. Has it gotten any better?
Yeah, we had, which I think a lot of the East Coast had like a cold snap, maybe last weekend, which was the day I decided I had to go out and go for a run. So
that was a poor decision.
I inhaled plenty of cold air, and I've had a dry cough all week.
Oh no!
It got up to like 50 degrees, and it's cooled off a little bit, but it's still kind of like compared to single digits, like 40 degrees feels pretty nice.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. From much further south, Mr. Will from Greenville, North Carolina. Hello, Will. How are you?
I am lovely, sir.
Did you go running in the cold air?
I went grocery shopping. So I did some laps,
Yeah.
Got some produce.
Okay. Did you get any fruits and vegetables?
Yeah, man. I got some bananas.
Yeah.
You know?
You go.
Ooh, bananas.
Actually, an adult up in here. All right, cool.
Yeah.
And last but not least, Stephanie from Atlanta. Hello, Stephanie. How are you?
Hi, we've not been grocery shopping.
No, grocery shopping is on the agenda once we get done talking about cool stuff.
Okay.
So we're going to do that first. And I think the first person who's going to talk about these cool things is Ryan. You've been playing stuff and things, and we would like for you to talk about them. So where would you like to start at?
Starting out strong. I guess the first thing I'll talk a little bit about is probably the most recent thing I've been playing in the past day or two is Slay the Spire.
Slay the Spire. Tell us about Slay the Spire. What is that?
Yeah, so it's been around for a while as an early access game, and I think actually, I'm pretty sure Nate has talked about it like maybe in the distant past.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Flex has also played it. But Slay the Spire is basically sort of a roguelike deck builder, as far as I can tell. So far I found it similar to, in some ways, to like Will and I have both played some games on mobile, like was it Daggerfall and Card Hunter?
Like Meteor Fall, Card Crawl.
Yeah.
Called like something thief, like Sneaky Thief or something. Card Thief, maybe.
Yeah, I haven't played Card Thief, but the other two, Meteor Fall and Card Crawl. In some ways, it actually reminds me of those kind of games, except like more complex, as far as I can tell. So it has some similarities in like you start out and you're climbing this, I guess your map kind of scrolls bottom to top and you have different stopping points along the way. I guess you're kind of climbing this spire, quote unquote. And so you can choose like a different path and, maybe this route has, and some of the paths also have forks, but like this route, maybe like you start off with a monster fight and then you can choose like to go to like, like a question mark, which could be a lot of different things. And then you can stop at a merchant and then you have a chance to rest. And then on this other path, maybe you fight like more monsters and you can fight like an elite monster who'll drop like, some artifact. So you have those kind of choices. And then, you have like loot choices a lot of times, like when you win a battle or whenever you open a chest or beat a boss, like the game, sometimes it just gives you like a relic, or, you know, sometimes it gives you a choice of like pick one of 3 cards, or, you know, pick this outcome or pick this upgrade or whatever. So
Okay.
it has some of the roguelike randomness stuff, but, you know, a lot of it is familiar in the sense of like the deck builder games. And, you know, they also have classes. So like one of my first runs, I was playing as this kind of warrior character, and I invested in a lot of aggressive cards, where like, you know, maybe I would take a little self damage, but I would get extra cards, and then I would, you know, have a lot of free attacks, and then like maybe I would have some kind of like, you know, attacks that did more for the more attacks I had played, or, you know, something like that.
Right.
Whereas now I'm playing like a thief character, and, you know, she has like a lot of draw and discard, and then you might have a card that like, you know, benefits you for discarding a card or for hitting an enemy with a certain status effect.
Right.
So there's a lot, but then, you know, obviously you don't want to bloat your deck too much, because then your synergies don't work and your card power level goes down, and all the traditional deck builder stuff.
Cannot let the power level go down.
Yeah.
It's generally bad when your power level drops.
Your runs don't go too long after your deck gets a little overfull.
Ryan, did you find that it sort of scratched that same itch for you? I mean, would you say that you liked it at least as much as, you know, Card Crawl and Meteor Fall?
Yeah, I mean, so far, you know, I've only played a couple of runs. I'm like maybe 4 or 5 hours into it, but so far, I would say, yeah, I probably like it at least as much as those games.
Cool.
It's, you know, it's not a mobile game, so I guess, you know, I don't know how that affects. That certainly affects the convenience of it, but it also is a more complex game. So
can't play it on your lunch break.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, at least not unless you like have your personal laptop with you.
Right.
Just gonna pop that open right in the middle of your cubicle and just be like, I'm just gonna play this now.
Just play some Slay the Spire.
There you go. Yeah, so I don't know. It just seems kind of an odd mashup, roguelike, but then also, you know, like cards, kind of thing. I mean, I was looking over some of the reviews and stuff while you were talking about it. It seems neat. I can honestly say I would have had a hard time imagining those two genres coming together. Have you been enjoying your time with it? Like, would you recommend it to others, or what do you think?
I mean, yeah, like so far, I guess obviously we'll see how it holds up, but and I assume there's more content than what I'm able to see right now. I think there's some gating, and the game is clearly like, hey, you know, play these runs and you might unlock more stuff. But yeah, I mean, I like that type of game that scratches an itch. The roguelike part of it is interesting, I guess, like compared to, but I mean, it works pretty well for the deck builders, like, because, you know, in certain other roguelike games, let's say like a traditional game like NetHack, you know, there's obviously an exploration element and a combat element, but then, you know, if you beat a monster or if you find a treasure or find something while you're exploring, you know, it could be like a new sword, and then you have to weigh out like the options of, so, you know, I guess in a deck builder, it kind of makes sense as well. They kind of narrow things down a bit more, I guess. So they make sure like your warrior deck doesn't get a bunch of rogue cards that it can't use or whatever, but it's still, they still usually good deck builders like those also offer multiple viable builds. So like, you know, maybe I play a defensive build where I get a bunch of block, and then I can, you know, I get some buff, or I can spend my block for damage or something like that.
Right.
Or, you know, you play a more aggressive build where you just kind of like keep trying to cycle through your decks and like combo out or something.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool so far. And then they have this relic system, which might be a little too complicated, because you find these like artifacts or relics, and you can pick up as many as you find, and those can be very powerful.
Okay.
And every now and then, like, a lot of times they're passive modifiers that you don't have to think about. Like, start combat, you regain 2 HP. Great. That's nice. It's kind of small, but then there are occasionally ones like I found this one that was like every 10th attack you'll deal double damage.
Right.
And like, when I'm sitting there like spamming through my attack cards, like I'm totally not looking at the status of that relic and I mean, the game has pretty good UI, and it's up there amongst my 20 relics with a number on it. So if I cared, like I could easily keep track of it. It's just like when you start layering these mechanics on top of the core mechanics, and like you have all these little side effects or passive effects like that you can think about, like it can definitely get a bit complicated. I think I like it overall, but every now and then I've just had these moments where it's like, oh, if I had, because I had this relic, which I barely read the text on, like if I had played this card, like maybe I would have, at a different time, I would have drawn an extra card or dealt more damage or whatever.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So that's kind of an interesting like addition to this genre.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay. Well, I don't know. It's just real neat. I know I've said that, and I'm kind of repeating myself a little bit, but this is a really neat concept. I'm kind of gonna dig into it a little bit. I think I might put this on my wish list for the next time it pops on sale.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're on mobile, I would start with a game like I might start with a game like Card Hunter or Meteor Fall.
Okay.
As just like a simpler example of that genre, and see if you like that kind of like deck builder gameplay.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a fun thing to me. So I will look into that. So sweet. All right. Any other things that you'd like to say about that one?
No, I haven't played a ton, so I'll be curious, like the length and everything.
About how long do you think it took you to get to the floor 51 in the run that you got to that?
Yeah. So I finished the game with 2 different classes of the available options I've seen so far, and the runs that I finished, I'm pretty sure there's a clock in the top right that just kind of tells you how long you've spent on your run.
Mm-hmm.
And on that last floor, it was, I think, approaching 2 hours. So I'm guessing I probably finished the run at between like 2 to 3 hours. And that seems pretty reasonable, because each, like, you'll play in sort of sections, and each section feels like it goes by pretty fast, but if you do 2 or 3, you'll look up and it'll be like an hour or so.
Okay.
So that seems like about right to say 2 to 3 hours for like floors 1 to 50. And
Gotcha.
I quote unquote finished a run, but it definitely seemed like it could go past that. It seemed like maybe the game was like, hey, because you're new, we're going to stop you here. Like, and maybe you should play some of the other classes, and who knows? I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but I also wouldn't be surprised if after playing a few successful runs, the game's like, hey, now you can go another 50 floors or something like that.
How many classes are there?
I've seen 3.
Okay.
Like a warrior, a rogue, and then I haven't looked at the last one.
Do you think the game is compelling enough to do a round with all 3 of them?
Oh yeah. I've finished 2, and next time I jump on, I'm hoping to try the third one. I mean, for my money, I plan on doing a run with all 3, and then there's a good chance, unless the game just seems to run out of content, or that be like the extent of the content, like I'll probably do several more runs and then see if it kind of opens up, to do like, because for a game this kind of beefy and complex, it did feel like the whole 2-hour run was a bit short. And it's totally okay if that's what it is, but when I'm playing my phone game and the run takes 1 or 2 hours, it's like, that kind of makes sense because you see sort of the extent of like the game's mechanics and the cards available and stuff like that. But, and, of course, sometimes in roguelikes, they do tend to cut you off a bit short just because you can always keep building and they don't always give you the opportunity to sort of endlessly power yourself up. But yeah, it did feel like maybe, it was maybe like more of a halfway point than a full run.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah, I mean, it seems like a pretty cool game so far.
All right, and I guess we'll see more to come next podcast when you've had a little more time to dig into it.
Yeah, most likely.
All right. So, what else have you been playing? What else has been taking up your time?
Yeah, well, I just kind of wound down over maybe last weekend on playing. So I've been playing a game called 2 Point Hospital for a good chunk of time.
All right.
And yeah, I mean, I haven't finished. So I guess like to start, I mean, I'm guessing you guys aren't.
No, because I'm just like 2 Point is basketball, hospitals. Okay, so you do surgery while playing basketball?
I saw it on some Game of the Year lists, I think, and I think I see a couple people be pretty impressed with it.
Is this Sim Hospital?
So I mean, basically, I guess like
I did play some Sim Hospital when I was younger, so this looks familiar.
I have heard that, yeah, this is sort of a spiritual successor to like a game called Theme Hospital.
Theme Hospital, maybe that was it.
Which I never played Theme Hospital, but I would say that this is sort of in a vein of like kind of fun, lighthearted, like management sim games, sort of like, Roller Coaster Tycoon, or maybe like, to a lesser extent, maybe like The Sims or some of those kind of games.
Theme, what was it called?
Theme Hospital?
No, there was a theme park game that was not a sim game, and but I don't remember the name, but it was definitely like one of those management type sims.
Like Roller Coaster Tycoon, or
no, there was another one that was a little more.
Okay, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. I don't remember the name, but
I'll Google it and find it. Way too late for it to be relevant for this conversation, but continue.
But yeah, I mean, if I had played this game in 2018, like there's a decent chance. I mean, like 2018 had a pretty strong top 10 list for me, but there's a pretty good chance it would have found its way maybe like a couple positions up from the bottom, maybe pushing out my number 9 or number 10.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I've really had a fun time with it. I guess it has a combination of, it is in the vein, I really have enjoyed some of those sim games in the past, like where you kind of, start out like trying to build up, whether it's a person or your theme park and like a Roller Coaster Tycoon or whatever, like, there is sort of the satisfying gameplay loop of saying, okay, well, I'm going to start with this hospital and like, all right, let me put like a GP's office here and some diagnosis equipment here. And then like, all right, I've got some patients coming in with some diseases, like need to put some treatment rooms over here. And then like, you start making money and then it's like, all right, I need to buy more hospital space, and you're managing like your hiring and you're managing your training and like,
right.
You just got those like all those decision points and all those plates spinning and like, and it has some buttons, some like dials and knobs like you can turn, so you can like say, okay, well, if my patients are like 95% diagnosed, just send them for treatment, or like, maybe I'll raise the price on treating this illness or stuff like that. So I found it to be like pretty fun, pretty solid in that kind of like classic like sim game mold. Even though it's different from some of the ones that I've played, probably.
Okay.
And then the other thing too that the game kind of has going for it is it's got like some really good sound design, and it's got like, it's a bit more like on the nose, I guess, with its humor, maybe. Like its humor is like kind of like sprinkled throughout the game, like in everything from like job applications to there's like this radio that constantly goes on, and they have DJs, and the DJs are like pretty much like, they're kind of like parodies of like real radio DJs.
Yeah.
So I mean, like one of the DJs is like Sir Nigel Bigglesworth.
Okay.
And I mean, I think this game was developed it may have been by Lionhead. I think it may be like a British game.
Okay. I don't remember.
So, but Sir Nigel Bigglesworth, he talks with this like very like, I guess proper British accent, and he has these like little sessions where he talks about vocabulary, and he's like very condescending about everything, and he reviews wine, and it's just like, they have a few different DJs they rotate to, so you'll be managing your hospital, and like the quote unquote 2-point radio will come on, and like, the DJs will just be talking about this like random silly stuff, which is a lot of, sometimes it's just background noise, but a lot of times it is good for a chuckle.
Yeah.
While you're like trying to put out the fire, and you're like Extract-A-Pan machine or whatever.
Yeah. And then this like really proper British guy just like comes on and starts talking about like stuff that's like, very, like high taste, and then you're like, the room's on fire.
So it's pretty great. Like, I like the sense of humor, and I like kind of that gameplay. I guess my biggest knock against the game is, so you play the game in kind of scenarios, which are basically just different hospitals. And they have sets of objectives, and you can meet all the objectives to get a star in the hospital, and you can move on, or you can keep playing up until like 3 stars. And I'd say my biggest knock against the game is that most of the scenarios are kind of like start from scratch scenarios. I think nearly all of them are. And the 3-star objectives sometimes just take a long time to meet. So like and I mean, like the whole start from scratch thing in these sim games is fine. And, sometimes they add a little complexity between scenarios, but I think there's sort of a missed opportunity for like mixing in. Well, first off, it just takes too long. I think starting every scenario from scratch and then, meeting some goal like earn $1 million, that's just going to take a lot of real world time to achieve.
Right.
And you're also kind of repeating the same gameplay loop of like just setting everything up. But also, they could definitely mix in some scenarios where like, let's say, you take over a hospital that has problems and you try to, fix some of the issues, or, maybe you have to meet some goals and like within a time constraint, like it just seems like that kind of cut and dry scenario format. Like, it's fine. I mean, it's an okay way to play these games, but there's definitely like an opportunity for more variety, and it does get a bit repetitive.
Okay.
So,
what about the difficulty level? I know some of these kinds of games can either be really boring, or you can end up like really in over your head very fast. Like, did you find the pace of challenge to be like good, or?
Yeah, I would say overall it has probably a fairly forgiving difficulty curve. And I definitely know what you're talking about, because I remember, sometimes playing games like Caesar or SimCity or Roller Coaster Tycoon. Like, you can very easily in those games like hit a negative cash cycle, and
yeah, or like you hit a key on your keyboard and like 2 seconds later everything is exploded and you're like, no, what?
Yeah, so 2 Point Hospital, it seems to have a pretty forgiving difficulty curve. Like, for the most part, like you can sell everything basically for the amount of money you paid for it. Aside from some maintenance, I think you can fire people at will. So, I mean, and you can move things around for free. Like, the game doesn't charge you money, like if you want to change your hospital layout or whatever, which is all really nice. And they have good editor tools too. So, like, it helps make some of that kind of work like less punishing and less like painful. And yeah, I mean, there were a couple of the later scenarios. I did find myself like getting into a bit of a negative cash cycle because I had hired a little bit more than I should, and the patients had some tougher diseases than I was expecting. But a big part of that I realized was just that I was being a little spendthrift.
You just wanted to go out there and spread sunshine and save lives.
Yeah, well, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the way these scenarios kind of all go to a start from scratch. So you'll go to one hospital, especially if you go for 3-star, and you'll just have basically all the money. You'll have built up your revenue stream and have like a very successful hospital so that you don't have to worry about cash. And then you'll go to a start from scratch scenario and you'll have like 2 patients and you'll hire 10 doctors, and it's like, oh, I need to wait until I am actually like successfully treating a few people before I can afford to hire all this. So there was some of that. I mean, I think the game, I wouldn't say it's trivially easy. Like, it does get more complex with like managing your hospital layout and like diagnosing patients efficiently. But as far as it being punishing, like, it definitely, because I know what you're talking about. Like, I totally remember playing games like SimCity and Roller Coaster Tycoon, and you lay things out and you think it's going okay, but like maybe a roller coaster is not selling that well, like, and you've invested a lot of money in it, and so you want to move it or sell it, and you only get like 40% of what you paid for it. So then you're in this giant like hole of cash, and like there's just no way to dig out. I do remember some of those kind of classic sim games having those like very punishing, like, you messed up, so like you basically have to start over cycles. And theme or 2 Point Hospital is, it's very forgiving about like just selling things if you run out of cash, or it's hard to go that red unless things just aren't working.
Unless you just really try hard. So I'm really excited for this question. So in these kinds of games, there's always a couple, but I want one scenario that like stands out where you're like, what the hell just happened? Like, I've played tons of games where it's just like, I didn't pick the corn this year, so everyone's on fire. Like, do any moments stand out to you where you're like, this is hilarious and awful?
That's a good question. I guess there are maybe 2. Like, one is I was playing a map, and I guess its little thing was that there were earthquakes,
Okay.
which would kind of damage your equipment. and cause everybody to run around in circles. But I kept hiring more janitors, and I thought and that was just a map where you just needed to hire 3 or 4 more janitors than normal, because that stuff would just damage a bunch of your machines and your janitors would be busy sweeping up all the pieces of your hospital that were laying around or whatever. So then my machines, because my janitors were so busy, my treatment equipment would get it would fall into disrepair, and the way that game handles it is if it gets too low, it just catches on fire. So
it's pretty close to real life. I've had that happen.
Yeah, so I had all these treatment machines in this one scenario that and I would have extra janitors, and I would be like, guys, what are you doing? And I would keep having to drop my janitors on sometimes multiple machines because they were so busy with all this other stuff that they would just not maintain these machines.
Do you have one of those commands where you could reprioritize things? So are you just resetting it? No, this one, stop.
Yeah. I guess sort of like in Roller Coaster Tycoon, you can just pick people up, or at least people who work for you. So there would definitely be a janitor unplunging a toilet, and
an angry hand of God comes down, and he's like, no.
Yeah, half the hospital away, my clown dehumidifier would be totally burning to the ground, and I would just be like, hey guy, I know that toilet needs to be unclogged, but there's a fire in the hospital.
And he's like, I'm a janitor, what do you want?
So and the doctor would be in there, or the nurse would be in there just screaming and panicking. It was good times.
That's amazing. I love those stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's nice to know that it's a little more forgiving than some of those old games, because I definitely played a lot of that genre when I was a kid, and then it's just I forgot to hook up the power plant to the city in SimCity 2000. I just have to restart the game now. There's no way to fix this. So
yeah, or this project of leveling off these mountains to make some good area took way more money than I expected, so I can't afford anything now.
Yep. Or I've taken out so many loans to try to zone this stuff because I was already negative cash flow. Now I'm even more negative cash flow, and never mind. I'll just try this again later.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that's 2 Point Hospital. Fun.
Yep.
And Will, did you say that you saw it on some Game of the Year list for 2018?
Yeah. I think some people were pretty big fans of it.
Okay. Yeah. This is the first that I'm hearing about it, so that's kind of cool.
I played, when I was growing up, I played SimCity and a little bit of The Sims, but I never got involved in any of the tycoons or Roller Coaster Tycoon. I think was a big thing for certain folks.
Right.
And I never got a chance to really experience any of that.
Yeah, I never played any of these kinds of games until much later in life, but I do remember watching Day 9 do a Fun Day cast where he was playing the theme hospital, or the original one that you're talking about.
Yeah, I saw it's on GOG and Origin. It's not on Steam. The theme hospital.
I probably should look at some screenshots because I am kind of curious. I mean, it's not a game I really want to go back and play, but
yeah,
it would be just curious to see from a graphic and layout perspective, how much inspiration this game or 2 Point drew from Theme Hospital.
Yeah, I actually played a ton of these when I was growing up. I played the original Railroad Tycoon. I played a lot of SimCity 2000 and 3000, and the theme park game that I was talking about is actually just named. It's just called Theme Park.
Nice.
It was released in 1994, so I guess they didn't really have too many game titles back then. So it was called Theme Park. So yeah, but it was pretty fun.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say that this is a genre that tends to probably appeal to certain people. Not everybody is going to want to play or enjoy a business management sim, but I don't know. Every now and then it scratches an itch for me.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right. Well, did you want to talk about anything else, Ryan, before we move on, or? What you got?
I guess probably not. I mean, I started The Witcher 3, and I'm about, I don't know, 5-10 hours into that, probably closer to 10, but it might be worth saving that for a future cast.
Okay,
can we get a tiny sneak peek? What are you thinking? Do you like it?
So far I am enjoying it. And I think some of the things that I heard are kind of coming to bear. Like, I've heard that, the combat isn't amazing. And it's fun, but yeah, it's like I'm playing on a +1 difficulty, so I guess I found some of that to be challenging. But at the same time, there is this kind of element of like setting up your hunts or setting up your fights, which is pretty neat. It's like you hit one monster with like the right type of sign, and it'll like, recoil more or whatever.
Right.
And this is a little bit of a dagger in Paul's back, but have you figured out how to dodge or block? Because I heard that's really important.
I dodge all the time, and I pretty much, if I'm in a combat situation, I'm probably blocking like I'm playing Dark Souls.
Okay.
I mean, because again, I'm playing on a slightly higher difficulty, so like things just like
that sounds terrible.
Mess me up. Pretty quickly. But I guess the other thing too is, I mean, it is like a very like almost cinematic, and like, they have a pretty good way of like delivering the story, and just the individual character dialogues like just kind of have this this sort of cinematic look. So they've done a really great job with that, because I mean, it's like, I don't know that I'm necessarily in love with this fantasy world, but we'll see. I mean, I like certain elements of it, but at the same time, when you just have Geralt like face to face with anything from like a random villager to like, like somebody of incredible importance, like it just they kind of deliver those moments pretty well. And of course, he's got a really good voice actor, and he quips a lot. So that's.
So of those 10 hours, how many hours have been spent playing Gwent?
It's funny because I played Thronebreaker, which is basically just Gwent. I played like 2 games of Gwent. I thought about playing more of it, but I don't really want to go around betting a bunch of money and playing a game within a game that I've already played elsewhere. So, I probably won't. I kind of decided, I probably won't be playing a lot of Gwent in The Witcher. We'll see if that changes, but I doubt it.
Cool. Well, looking forward to hearing more of what you thought about it. I spent almost every hour Paul played it watching him play it. It was so good.
It's a pretty fun video game.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and we'll keep it moving then. Will, you've also been doing some stuff and some things. Where would you like to start talking about today?
Huh?
Yeah, that's you, baby.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'll talk.
Dramatic echo effect too.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
I don't know.
It's funny. I guess if I just hit one threshold of volume,
apparently,
then it just
you ascend into godhood. Apparently,
I just break Craig.
Oh boy,
poor Craig.
He sends the love back to you.
Yeah, that's it. Well, the first thing I guess I'll chat about is a game called Cosmic Top Secret, which I don't know if you guys saw on the channel. I had kind of written in what I thought I might end up talking about last time, and I still probably haven't played anything much more interesting than that, so I'll start with that one. And I think I just found it digging around on Steam, looking for like interesting kind of games with wild stories. But I think it's a first time developer. This woman named Trine Layer, I guess, and she's from Denmark, if I'm recalling all this correctly. And she kind of had an inkling, or at least she had heard as she was growing up that her parents were involved in like intelligence. So some sort of like whatever the equivalent to the CIA is or whatever in Denmark, but kind of during the time of the Cold War. And so in the game, which has this really wild art style, you're basically it's kind of like papercraft. It's like a like sort of 2D and a 3D world, and the way you traverse is by like rolling up in a ball and then kind of just rolling around this sort of 2D kind of traverse this
I mean, when I
2D
think of
landscape.
intelligence and FBI and things of that nature, I do think of rolling around.
Sounds fair.
And the gameplay is actually pretty underwhelming. And I guess that's kind of, maybe that's to be expected as a first time developer, but a lot of it is just sort of going around finding these little things in the landscape. So you might roll over, and there's this overlying grid. So it's like it's like the alphabet on one side, and then you're sending numbers on the other side. And so maybe you'll know that there's a piece of intelligence in A2, and so you'll get into a ball, roll over to A2, and then look around and see if you can find something that's like highlighted or has some little streamers coming off of it. And usually the pieces of intelligence are just like represented by floating, almost like postcards or something, just sitting around in the map. And so you'll pick it up. But the thing that I actually really liked about it is that, as you collect these different pieces of intelligence, you've got certain pieces that you need to collect to advance to the next level. And I think there are like 6 levels in the game, and each one corresponds to some level of security. So I think the first one is like agent, and then when you get to the next level, it's called confidential, then like secret, top secret, and apparently the highest level is cosmic top secret. And so you're, in addition to getting the pieces of intelligence you need to go to the next level, there's also these like sort of side quest dossiers. And as you collect all the pieces of intelligence that correspond to them, it usually unlocks this video. And these videos are like so fascinating to me. They're like such a like slice of life type of thing. Like they're not stylized at all. It's almost like she's just sitting in a living room with a camera like on her dad, and her dad might have a mic on, and he'll just talk. And it's almost like the same way that like most of our fathers probably talk. It's not like he's prepared some sort of story. It's just sort of like, oh yeah, I remember doing that. It was pretty complicated, and so it's really kind of endearing in this weird way. And I think it resonated with me, especially well, because I'm one of these folks who, and Paul can attest to this. I'm a dude who has a weird dad. And it's kind of like he's always kind of been a mystery to me. And so of course, in light of, there was a tragedy recently with one of my friends and his father. It kind of, I've been reflecting on this game even a little bit more. And so this girl, wants to learn more about what her father did during the Cold War. And she goes through all these steps. So like she tries to write the Danish government to see like what her parents can actually say. And she looks and tries to find these documents that have been declassified over the years. And she goes through so much, and her parents, especially at the beginning of the game, are very, very cagey. And so it's almost like talking to parents about like sexuality, like when you're like 12 and you're like, Dad, what are they talking about? And in the locker rooms at school or whatever. And Dad's like, what do you want for dinner?
Yeah.
And so that it's like, even though I don't, as far as I know, none of our parents were CIA agents. At the same time, like we're all kind of familiar with this sort of cagey parental, I guess, delivery, of like whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought it was a really neat thing. It's almost like this game that she created to kind of, I guess, show to other people this sort of journey that she went on to try and learn more about what her dad did during the Cold War. And it turns out that it was tremendously boring. It's like, I mean, I don't even think I'm really giving it away, but it's like he came up with some model that helped the Danish government figure out how many resources like the Soviets needed to sustain their economy or something like that. It was like so lame, but at the same time, like, obviously you don't know, yeah, that's great. So Steph just posted a picture of the sort of Trine talking to her father.
You said a unique art style, and that is a style I've not seen before.
Yeah,
it reminds me of old like Flash videos and like old time Jib Jab.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Actually, yeah, I could see that. And
it's horrifying.
Sorry, I didn't mean to horrify.
We just can't wait to see how you take this art style and make it into the ATACS logo for this week.
I might have to. This is new.
So what is the gun or the pistol for?
I think so. I guess it's part of like just the general lifestyle over there, but like they go to these different. It's almost like Boy Scouts or something. So even though her father has like retired from intelligence community and retired from the military, it's like one of his hobbies is like going out with these other old Danish guys, and they like do orienteering, so they like, it's almost like, if you ever heard of like geocaching, it's probably something kind of similar, and so I think probably at this part of the game, it's like they're out at a shooting range or something like that, doing like one of these like orienteering, random outdoorsy courses that it seems like they engage in. But it's for our worldwide listeners. Basically, there's a picture of Trine talking to her father while holding a gun, and so.
Okay.
But yeah, I just thought it was really kind of interesting, kind of endearing. I guess I can't give it. I suppose recommend it just because it's like super different, but like the gameplay, it's almost like you can tell the developer wasn't really 100% versed in trying to make a really, really engaging experience. Mm-hmm. And it's by no means boring, but it is a little bit repetitive. So, but anyway, so that was Cosmic Top Secret.
Top Secret. I like the name.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, and then I don't know if anyone has any questions about Cosmic Top Secret.
No, I was just looking through some of the pictures, and I must say this is a very, very interesting art style. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So the other thing I thought would be interesting to talk about. I usually do this rundown at the very end of the year where I kind of look through all the top 10 lists and it's like, is there anything I missed?
Yeah.
And I saw this game that was on 2 different lists.
2 Point Hospital.
And I don't know if you guys actually saw this on these lists, but there's a game called My Child Lebensborn.
No.
That was on 2 different lists. And I was like, what is this about? And so I looked it up. It's a mobile game. And I kind of played it over Christmas break because, for most of Christmas break, I was like up in Pennsylvania, which is where my wife's from. So I didn't have like my PC up there, but I did have my phone. So I started rocking this game. And apparently it's called a dark Tamagotchi. Okay. So if you guys remember the Tamagotchis that you'll kind of like, or you're taking care of whatever it is. But basically, the core plot is that there were these soldiers, these Nazi soldiers that occupied Norway in World War II. And at the end of the war, basically, there were these children that were fathered by Nazi soldiers and Norwegian women. Mm. And the game is basically you're playing kind of the adopted father or mother of one of these children who was basically born out of the relationship between a Nazi officer and a Norwegian woman. And it is, the first thing that, Steph put in the channel is, oh Lord, so sad. And she is absolutely correct. This game
oh my God,
is an absolute gut punch. But at the same time, I loved it to the point where, and of course, maybe I'm sort of like a sadness junkie, but like to the point where, I would probably, kick off, kick off one of the games at the end of my top 10 list and probably insert this thing like at number 5 or something. Like,
wow.
So you really liked it a lot then?
Yeah. And there's so many moments that, it never really feels, I mean, in some ways, of course, it's gamey, because you're, the basic needs you're trying to meet are sort of, food, clothing, leisure activities and things like that. But I remember there being days where, the child was like bullied at school and he would come home and it was almost like the game would give you the opportunity. He would be like, hey, can you read me a story? Like before he goes to bed. And the little mechanic is super simple to read him a story. But there were times that the days were so bad that it was almost like you almost thank the game for giving you that small opportunity to do something nice for this kid, and so it really makes you think a lot about anyone who grows up in sort of a society where they're not accepted. Almost like, what would it be like, for instance, to be, a black parent, raising a black child in like the 1950s or something in like white suburbia,
Right.
How would you, how do you describe, why are people being mean? How do you describe that to your child, or how do you try and help them make sense of it? And, what do you do?
So does this game run like on its own, like, because you likened it to like Tamagotchi, but like
no.
Okay.
So
because Tamagotchi, like I would go to school and then I would check my Tamagotchi after school and it would be dead.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Like I can't kill these children.
No. So it's they're like these little time units, and everything you do takes a unit of time, and so there are certain, basically, most days what you end up doing is you kind of go to work, you go to work, you come home, maybe on the way home, you pick up some food or something. And then when you get home, usually you talk to your child and they'll tell you basically, what happened at school or what they did with their friend or, whatever it is. And then you'll kind of usually have an opportunity to talk to them a little bit about it. And some days are, not every day is some huge conversation. Some days it's just kind of normal, and some days it's just sort of, kind of still sort of sad, so it's not like every single day you're like making life-changing choices necessarily, but
so spoilers, do you ever make these children happy?
I thought that the ending was very, I was happy with the way it ended, and
okay.
it didn't.
What, you were happy or the kids were happy?
Oh, no, it wasn't a downer of an ending.
Okay, because we've already established that you love sadness, so I wanted
right, yeah, but
okay.
It's not a downer of an ending or anything like that. But I guess
I was happy with all the sadness.
I was very excited about how sad those children were.
I was happy with the sadness level.
It was the most depressing ending ever. 10 out of 10.
Would not play again.
But yeah, it was cool, and so I could definitely see kind of why it made some people's lists, and obviously for me, when I don't have children and I don't have a particular interest in having children anytime soon, there were some parts of it that I think, nothing is actually like raising a child, but I felt like, whatever understanding I had of that experience was enhanced even slightly, by playing this.
Mm-hmm.
And experiencing that sort of thing. So, yeah. So, at one point, your kid's like, what is a Nazi or whatever, and you're sitting there like trying to be like, well, so, or they called me Nazi boy, like, and you're like, well, and so, and of course, you can do all kinds of things. You can try and explain it from the groundwork, like give him or her, your child, like a really like cold like explanation, like, well, the Nazi Party came to power in Germany and the blah blah blah.
Does it give you an option to be a shitty parent where you're just like, that's you, fucker?
So
I don't know. I didn't go looking for that.
I do have a question about this.
Sure.
So would you say your child was about 12?
Huh.
And did they ask you questions about sexuality that they heard in the locker room?
Oh no!
Wait, I don't know what we're referencing.
That was your example from like your parents being cagey.
Oh!
Never mind.
You're talking about from Cosmic Top Secret.
Whoosh.
Yeah. No. I don't think so. No,
and were you cagey when you were replying to your child about what a Nazi is?
Yeah, well, I would say I tried to be upfront about it, but obviously, a child only has so much cognitive complexity, and so I think that the child actually reacted appropriately to what I tried to do,
Right.
But yeah, I think the child's too young for sexuality. It might be like 8 or something like that.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's my Child Lebensborn, and it was a hoot.
It was a hoot. It's a very sad hoot, is what it sounds like.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. So sad.
So those are. I mean, I could talk a little bit about one more game, or we could just
go ahead.
Hey, Will.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I heard you were a pretty big fan of battle royales.
Who told you that?
I think you might have gotten the wrong information, Ryan.
Yeah.
I mean, we were playing a battle royale just the other day.
We were.
Are we not supposed to talk about that?
Do you want me to talk about that, Ryan? Of all things?
No, I thought it would be funny to poke you a little bit. Because yes, Will and I and Flex and Nate separately have played some Apex Legends.
Yeah, it's a battle royale, and you do the sort of things that you do in a battle royale.
Is it really sad, Will?
I mean, 10 out of 10. Depressing.
He's like, it depends on which end of the gun you're on.
Yeah.
So, okay, actually, I do have questions because I've seen this game, very briefly, and it
Which
kind
game?
of the one y'all are talking about, Apex,
Oh, Apex,
whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So it kind of seems like, definitely battle royale, but first, it looks like Overwatchy. Like, what is this character selection stuff about? Like, is that good?
I'm going to let Ryan take all these questions.
No, I want to hear your intake, Will.
I mean, this is your section, Will. Are you sure you don't want to take the ball and run with it?
Someone injected Apex Legends into my section.
Someone is hijacking my segment with the battle royale.
I mean, we can just wait. I'm sure. Nate and Flex will talk about it.
Like, I think the thing is, I enjoy. I think that the shooting feels good in like Titanfall 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the same developer made Apex Legends, which still really wasn't enough to get me to try it. But I've got friends who like competitive multiplayer, especially competitive shooters, and they were like, "Hey, William, download this and play it with us." And I was like, in my head, I'm like, I'll give it a shot. And I tried to go into it as unbiased as possible. But after 2 games, I still was saying to myself, like, I do not understand the appeal of this type of game. And I played a couple more times after that. I could certainly never play it again and be super happy. But
that sounds like your game.
Yes, sounds like my jam. But yeah, that's and you have different characters, and they have different ultimates or abilities.
Yeah, it's one of those.
You got some characters, but
they got some guns.
Yeah, you don't have guns. You got to find guns.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
You jump out of a plane and then you find guns.
Right.
You think that they would come up with something different than jumping out of a plane by now?
You got a jetpack when you jump out of the plane this time.
Oh, okay.
At least I'm pretty sure you did.
And the thing I wrote in the channel, did you guys all read my ridiculous rant in the channel about this? Is basically that, battle royales in general seem like the feedback is like not quite as immediate. So if you like, for instance, like, all of us, except for maybe the exception of Steph, but possibly even Steph, have played a decent amount of like a Call of Duty game, I
was a Halo fan, but yeah, I've played a lot.
Well, so I guess the thing is, it's like, I think it's easier in a traditional death match, and that's all I'll say. I think it's a lot easier in a traditional death to realize where you went wrong than it is in one of these battle royales.
I'll agree with
it's
that.
like, did I did I not search for enough equipment? Did I not pick the right character?
Am I just not good?
Was it just my shooting being bad? And I think it's not impossible to glean a understanding of what, nets you a good result in the game. But I think it requires a lot more sustained effort than it does in maybe one of these traditional things, I guess, like the TDMs or whatever. But yeah, it's but it's a thing right now, and people dig them, in a closely related thing, and I'll shut up after this. I think it's interesting to look at like general like gaming trends and see these things get reflected by major studios. Like one of the games that I debated talking about that I'm not going to say very much about at all is Red Dead Redemption 2, which I tried a bit over the past week or so. And it's an open world, it's basically an open world, action game in the same way that like the previous Red Dead was and like the other GTAs are, but it's almost got like tons of like subsystems that remind you of like a survival crafting game, So you've got like, do you have clothes on that are warm enough? Like, do you need to, go ahead and shave your beard? Your horse is dirty, so their health is deteriorating. You need to feed your horse. You need to feed yourself. You can be underweight, and that can affect how you ride on your horse or how much health you have or how fast your health regenerates. Mm-hmm. Like, if your gun's not clean, it can jam. Like, there are tons of finicky little subsystems. And for certain people, like, Red Dead Redemption 2 was like a dream come true. And I think it's really interesting to kind of reflect on, in my opinion, it's almost like if you take some of these like open world survival games that people like, and then you like jam those mechanics into like your Rockstar open world action game, like I think you get kind of Red Dead Redemption 2. And so it's almost like, to me, it's weird to think that there are people out there who like get really engaged with all these little mini subsystems, but
right.
Well, but anyway, and I mean, a lot of people were upset too when Apex Legends came out because they took it as like evidence that maybe Respawn wasn't working on Titanfall 3. And it's like, why are you guys,
Respawn confirmed that they weren't working on Titanfall 3.
Yeah, well, all I'm saying is what I heard, what I read in the newser sites.
The newser sites. Yeah, and there's also some questions about what that's going to be. So I saw the immediate reaction of like, this thing came out, that means Titanfall 3 is not. And then I saw the company
maybe that's wrong, But,
yeah, and the company got out there and they did say like, no, we're working on a product in the Titanfall universe right now, and it's like, okay, well, if you're working on a product in the universe, that doesn't sound like a ringing endorsement for Titanfall 3. So we'll just sit here and wait, and we'll see what they do. But I would not be surprised if a year or two from now we find out that they were working on it. This was it, and then they're like, we need to make more money. Just make it into a battle royale and go. Which we don't know that yet, but I would not be surprised if that's how this plays out like a year from now.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, that whole topic's a bigger debate, but my understanding is that in the past they had confirmed they were working on Titanfall 3, and now they have confirmed that they are not working on Titanfall 3. Which, I mean, I don't think that game sold as well as they would like, so I guess that's an unfortunate business decision, but Titanfall 2 did have an amazing campaign. One of the best first-person shooter campaigns, I think, out there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I still need to pick that up. I know it's constantly on sale on Origin. I just haven't gotten around to getting it yet.
Yeah, but those are all the words I have to say, Paul.
All right. Well, thank you for all your words, Will. We always love them.
Stay tuned. 2 weeks from now, I'll bring you more words.
2 weeks from now, more words from Will. You heard it here first.
Excellent.
So Steph, I know that you hadn't been playing a ton, but you have been playing a little bit of that Kingdom Hearts. So why don't we just do a quick Kingdom Hearts check-in and see where you are and how you're feeling about what you've been playing so far?
So I mean, from the last ATACS, like I did play a lot for a couple of days, and then I realized that I had gotten sucked into the darkness with my heart,
Mm-hmm.
and my heart was full of darkness, and I needed a break because I was playing nonstop.
So you're not a darkness junkie.
No, I'm not a darkness junkie. I was
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Next topic. No, like I it's so fun. Okay, so I don't think I actually talked to any about it last ATACS, so I'll go back to the beginning, or I'll never figure out what I'm trying to say. So the first like couple of hours, I was so angry the whole time I was playing this damn game, because the plot and the way they were going about it, and I'm just, it was like embarrassing.
It sounds like a Kingdom Hearts game.
Yeah. Okay, so before this game came out, I spent probably like 8 or 10 hours just watching YouTube videos, like having people try to explain to me like what this plot is. I finally figured it out enough where I'm like, okay, I feel good enough to play this game now. And thank God I did, because they have not done about explaining anything from the 12 games total that are in this franchise. And it was like watching a kid's cartoon when you weren't expecting a kid's cartoon, which is kind of funny when you're playing a game with Disney characters in it. And it was silly and stupid, and the screen loads, right? And then you go through a little bit of plot, and then it's like, oh, you're actually playing Kingdom Hearts 2.9. And that puts you into like the Olympus, like Hercules movie, and you're like, I don't want to play Kingdom Hearts 2.9. I freaking want to play Kingdom Hearts 3.
Right.
Like, it was, I think I screamed at that point. I was so infuriated. Something about seeing the title screen not be Kingdom Hearts 3 just enraged me in ways. But after I got past how goofy the game is, and I got to like the Toy Story world, which was the first world I went to besides your little home station world. Oh my God, fell in love. The sets that you play through are spectacular. The interactions with the Disney characters are really endearing. Like, I don't dislike Winnie the Pooh or any of the other Disney characters, but some Disney characters I'm not as hot on as I am others, and I still found myself like enjoying it. There's this feeling that the game is trying to grow with you, and shows you metaphors about growing pains and, puberty and like adulthood and losing your innocence and coming to terms with reality and stuff like that. You start to see that I am a little more than halfway through the game, I think. I am currently in Pirates of the Caribbean, which is amazing. You actually get to take a ship and you just get to go around the world a little bit on your own and explore nooks and crannies and treasure hunt. And actually, as you're going through some of these more mature places, some more mature themes come up. Like up until this point, nobody has ever really died.
Right.
And so far, nobody has actually, quote unquote, died. Though there's been a lot of resurrections and turning into nobodies and somebodies and everything else. But they actually breach the subject of death. And I was kind of taken aback by that. And I just feel like the game is trying to mature, which makes me happy. But it's the whole time I'm playing it, though, I'm just thinking like, this game is so much younger than what I was wanting it to be. That's because I was so much younger when I played the first and second game.
Right.
So there's something kind of beautiful and poetic about that. Kind of like when the third Toy Story movie came out and it was a little darker and you're like, we're not kids anymore.
Nope.
And you get all sad about that because you're old. But no, the gameplay is amazing. There's some things that are really clunky. You get a lot of, they give you like special moves and summons and the little special fighting techniques that pop up on the screen. A bunch of them are from Disney rides, and It's really fun to play, but it gets really irritating how quick that they reward you with like limit breaks and things like that. Like it's not that it's too easy, it's just like they're just throwing it out there, so it's less special when you do it.
So it's like you feel like that these are big special attacks / summons, but at the same time, every time you get into combat with even the smallest enemy, the game's like, "Hey, pull out the spaceship again," and it's like, seems a little overkill for Imp number 4, you know?
Exactly, and the boss fights in this game are incredible. They're larger than life. They're really fun. They usually have like some kind of special ability that pops up just for that monster, and you get to see that ability used in a whole new way. And those types of things are really fun and really engaging. But then you get into, like you said, boss number 4 with the yellow shirt instead of a red shirt comes on the screen. And it's like, oh, guess what? Donald wants to do a special move with you. Goofy wants to do a special move. You can get on a roller coaster. Here's some teacups. And you're like, no.
Scrooge McDuck.
No. Scrooge McDuck actually opens up a bistro with the little rat from Ratatouille. And you get to hunt for ingredients and do like really low-grade cooking mama kind of stuff and make souffles and stuff.
My eyes kind of glazed over there.
That's fine. It's really fun.
You were saying the words, and then all of a sudden I just passed out. I don't know what happened.
10 out of 10. But what I really do like is that they have tried to incorporate different types of gameplay styles in there. When you're in the level from the movie Frozen, you go sledding kind of on Goofy's shield, and that's a whole new mechanic. When you're in the Caribbean, you actually get to control the pirate ship, and you get to fight with the cannons, other ships, and some flying things. The Toy Store world is by far my favorite. You get to jump into these little mech robot toy suits, and now suddenly you're playing a mech game. You are the anime, and it's amazing.
Is the core gameplay still very much like action RPG? Like,
absolutely.
From like the first, I guess I've only played the first game. So.
Like I'm even hesitant. Like I know it would be classified as action RPG, but the RPG elements, your level number goes up. But I don't really feel like there's much else there. Like I'm sure that there's a customizable.
Goofy doesn't have a skill tree.
No, there's no. I didn't see a skill tree. There are abilities you can equip.
So you can't level up his Hyuk.
Oh no!
Oh man, someone's bitter about ATACS.
Maybe we shouldn't talk about Kingdom Hearts.
Woof.
Certain people on the channel.
That's fine.
Wait, I didn't mean that in a bad way. I just wanted to level up his Hyuk.
Just wanted to level up his Hyuk, guys. And ladies and gentlemen, we had a little bit of a technical hiccup there. We will leave it as an exercise to the editor to figure out exactly what was captured and what wasn't with Craig there. So we were talking about Kingdom Hearts 3, and Will was very upset that there were not any skill trees to upgrade Goofy's Hyuk. So we're going to try to pick it up there, and I think Steph was also lamenting the fact that there were no skill trees, but
not really.
No, maybe not. But so we're going to try and pick the Kingdom Hearts 3 discussion back up, and we'll see what ends up happening with the audio once we finish out this episode. So I guess moving beyond skill trees, what are some of the other things that you wanted to hit on, Steph?
The gummy ships.
The gummy ships.
So fun. I remember playing the first Kingdom Hearts games and hating traveling between the worlds because I did not give a single fuck about the gummy ship. The gummy ship system. The second game, I don't remember what the gummy system was. I was mostly drunk when I played that game.
Fair enough.
I was drunk during most of my early 20s. And then, but this game, like, I've really enjoyed the gummy flying system-y doodle. I love customizing the ships. I like making them look really stupid. I like putting as many weapons on there. I mean, to hell with health and defense and mobility. I just want to shoot things and watch them explode. And I think like the thing that they got really right in this game was I'm not necessarily a completionist, but I do like to do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I like to search nooks and crannies. I like to find hidden surprises. And there's like no limit to those. You go around space, you shoot at rocks, you get a material you needed to craft a better sword. You know, and just throughout the whole game, there's just so many fun things to explore. And, you know, if you can get over the main character being a giant doofus, which I think was the most upsetting part for me, is I don't remember Sora being this much of a complete, like, sad sack. But he is, and he's kind of the running joke of everybody.
Is there an Incredibles world?
No, I think the only other world I haven't played, there's a Big Hero 6.
Is there a Emperor's New Groove world?
No.
What about Atlantis?
I mean, there's like The Little Mermaid.
It's possible that...
But not the movie Atlantis.
It's also possible that some of those references showed up in, like, Kingdom Hearts 2 or one of the in-between games.
I don't know. I was just like, those are like my favorite movies that are Disney and Pixar. So I was like, just trying to see if there was a part of those.
No, those are some great ones. And I wouldn't be surprised if, like, in Kingdom Hearts 2, they had, like, a reference to The Incredibles or maybe, like, a cameo from Emperor's New Groove.
Emperor Kuzco.
Not so much that I remember, but I can't speak for the other 10 games I didn't play. Gotcha. Oh, I did play one of them. I played Birth by Sleep, and they had a Cinderella section in there, and I don't think the other games had a Cinderella section, so it's possible.
Kuzco's poison. The poison meant specifically for Kuzco.
The spinach puffs look so good.
That was a great movie. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, as I play, I'm sure I'll develop more like thoughts overall, but so far I'm really enjoying the gameplay. I love searching nooks and crannies. I love level grinding. I do wish that there were a skill tree, but they do have it set up where you do abilities where if you equip... It kind of reminds me of like the materia system from Final Fantasy VII where you equip certain weapons and certain like garments, and you can add specific abilities that are attached to those.
Okay.
Which is
sounds like it does have some RPG elements to it.
It does. I guess I just have a hard time looking at it as an RPG when I'm so used to I don't know, I guess it is kind of like Final Fantasy 15-ish. There are totally cool moment. So I hated it at first, but once I got used to it. So Sora can do some cool shit, like he can run up walls. Like only specified walls, but you can run up walls and
So Sora is your main character this time?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But he kind of wasn't in the second game, right?
Was
he was Roxas?
Yeah, Roxas. Yeah. You played as Sora too in that game, but
okay. Yeah,
it was Roxas, which is Sora's nobody. So I guess you were still kind of Sora?
Oh. No, spoilers? I'm thoroughly confused now.
Spoilers from like
don't worry about
15 years ago. Yeah, like I said, it took me about 10 hours of watching videos about the same plot to actually understand the plot, and I still could not explain the plot in a way that wouldn't have people probably yelling at us for corrections. But there are a ton of hilarious videos and you should definitely, even if you hate the idea of Kingdom Hearts, watch these people try to explain the plot because it's amazing. But other than Kingdom Hearts, because it is cool stuff, I do want to mention that Paul and I are still on our Dragon Ball kick. We did get through all of Dragon Ball Z Kai, and then we are 80-something episodes into Dragon Ball Super.
Yep.
And we did get to go see the Broly movie that came out.
I've heard that one's really good.
It was fucking amazing. Oh my god. Yeah, and I don't know, like some of the things I feel are kind of stupid in Super, but some of the things were kind of stupid in Dragon Ball Z. It's anime, so like at least a quarter of it is stupid. But when you get your good moments, man, you get your good moments, and I am on a kick. I freaking love Dragon Ball so much.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that a little bit that you know, if you ever a fan of the Dragon Ball series and then you kind of fell off and you're wondering if you can just kind of pick up and just watch Broly without really a whole lot of stuff from Super, I would say the answer to that question is yes. There are a couple of small references that you might miss, but in terms of just like being entertained, I don't think you have to go and spend the hours required to watch through everything that has come out in Super in order to really appreciate Broly. And even if you haven't finished Dragon Ball Z, and you kind of watched it whenever you were younger, and then you just are kind of like, hey, a lot of people are really talking about this movie. You know, they do a good job of you know, as long as you know
it's its own contained story.
Yeah, it's its own self-contained story. The only thing that you really need to know is who some of the really major characters are inside of that universe. So, like, if you know who Goku is, you know who Vegeta is, you know who Frieza is. As long as you know those big three, which most people who watch that should probably know who those guys are, even if you watched it for a little bit when you were a kid. You can still sit down and it is an enjoyable 90-minute experience. So don't get put off too much if you've kind of fallen off or you were never really into it super big.
Absolutely. And the animation was amazing. It is so nice seeing these fight scenes, the way that they've been animated, the way the camera, well, you know, camera quote unquote moves around, and yeah, I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away. Like, no, it's not the deepest story in the world. It's a pretty good story, but it's just nice to see something that you loved as a kid get picked up and taken care of in a way that makes you not ashamed to be 33 years old and buying T-shirts of Vegeta from Hot Topic. So
it's true. It's true.
Yeah, that's my cool thing. Other than WrestleMania is coming up in a little bit, so.
Yes, the wrestling. That is coming up relatively soon. Also, there's a pay-per-view tonight, so we should probably move this along.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a ton that I wanted to touch on. I did want to say that I have completed my playthrough of Rebel Galaxy. I don't have too much else to say about that game other than at some point whenever you're playing it, you kind of get to this point where you're like, all right, I got the big ship, I got the big guns, I got the big, you know, everything, and I'm gonna finish out this story. And I definitely over equipped for the story missions. So I saw that story through from end to end, and it was not a great story, but at the same time, once you buy the big ship and once you finish out the story, I feel like that's a pretty good place to stop for that game, even though there is still a lot of procedurally generated content that you can still go through. So yeah, still a recommendation. I put about 35 hours into it, and that's about how long it takes to see everything upgrade to, you know, the most advanced weapons and ships. And I think that's probably 35 hours. That's well spent if you're into that kind of you know, free space exploring, trading, fighting type game. So I won't say any more about that other than I finished it. And the other thing that I've picked up and started to play a little bit is The Witcher Enhanced Edition. I think I'm probably about as far in that one as Ryan is in The Witcher 3. So I'm a little over 5 hours, and I'm right at the end of chapter 1. So I think there's 5 chapters plus an epilogue, according to the in-game journal, basically. So I'm just about a fifth of the way through the game, I think, and there's definitely some interesting jank that goes on with this. I had a cutscene with an NPC that was talking to me for a side quest, and then an enemy kind of spawned behind her out of nowhere. And as she was talking, I was trying to get out of the cutscene, and then she died because the enemy that spawned behind her killed her. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm never seeing that side quest again.
Rude.
Yeah. So there was a couple of things like that. And the only other thing that I would say is really, really anachronistic is the interface of the game itself. Actually, like, they don't really provide a lot of great explanations for how to do what should be like relatively simple things. Like for Geralt to level up, you need to meditate. So I spent like 15 minutes trying to figure out how to meditate, because it wasn't in any of the buttons on the screen. So I went into the controls looking for a keyboard shortcut, and it wasn't there. And then I went into the advanced controls to see if it was something else, and it wasn't. So I finally had to Google just how do I meditate. And yeah, there's some rules around it. You have to go to a fireplace, but not just any fireplace will work. It's an actual like thing that you can interact with called fireplace. Or certain NPCs will give you a dialogue option that you can click on that lets you meditate. And it's like, okay, so I've either got to run around and people who they're generally story characters, but I was pretty new to this area, so I didn't really know any of them. Or I just had to go find like a fireplace somewhere. And once I did that, and once I realized where these spots were, it's fine, but it doesn't explain that to you at all in the game. And I've run into 3 or 4 things like that where I'm like, okay, they want me to pick herbs. I can see this plant. I know this is the plant they want me to do. Like, why can't I pick the herb? So I Google it. Oh, I need to put in a talent for herb picking. And it's just a whole bunch of like really just dense stuff to try to try to get through. And once you know it, like, it's perfectly fine. But I feel like that the way that I would have liked to approach this was if there was someone who had like just recently played through this game, that I could just be like, hey, how do I do this? And then they just come over and like, because the in-game tutorials are not great and the in-game help is not great. But I figure that's more of a symptom of that game being released a long time ago. But just fair warning, if you do want to pick that up and play it, you're definitely going to need to do some Googling of just how do I do like simple gameplay system type things. So that's been my experience with it so far. Same voice actor as Witcher 3, so that's pretty cool. And the story and the dialogue has been really good, which I was kind of surprised by. So it's mostly just a matter of all of the trap around the actual gameplay, because they tell you to do things, but they don't quite tell you how to. So that's kind of where I've been at with that. But Ryan, did you ever play the first Witcher?
No, I've just recently started on the third, and I guess Thronebreaker was probably my first foray into the Witcher mythology or lore, story, or however you say it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I have noticed some kind of technical glitchiness in the third game, which a little more than I expected.
Right.
Like there was an NPC I needed to talk to for a quest who was standing physically. She was supposed to be in a room in the second floor of this like building, and I walk into the building and she's not there. She's like above me. So I walk outside and look, and she's like hovering over the roof, like kind of off to the side. And I'm like, how am I supposed to talk to this person?
Right.
So I had to like save and load, and then she snapped into the correct position.
I gotcha. Yeah, I haven't run into too much other than that one cutscene fiasco, but I certainly expect to run into more than just that. Continue. So, but yeah, I think that's really all that I've got to talk about. I hadn't had a ton of time to play video games here in the last couple But I've definitely been sinking into The Witcher these past couple of days, and tomorrow's a holiday, so I'll be playing a lot more of that then. So yeah. Well, I think that's probably gonna just about wrap it up for us here. So we'll do a quick around the table, and Ryan, we'll start with you. What are you planning on playing or finishing out here in the next couple of weeks?
Slay the Spire and The Witcher The Witcher 3 are still high on my list, and then there's a good chance I'll play some multiplayer of some kind, Apex Legends or something like that.
All right. Steph, what about you? What are you thinking that you're gonna be digging into here the next couple of weeks? Just Kingdom Hearts 3, or do you have anything else on your?
Gonna try to finish up Kingdom Hearts 3. I'm still playing God Awful Clicker, and I probably will continue to play God Awful Clicker.
Yeah. All right. There you go. And God Awful. We should try that. Will, what about you? What are you planning on doing?
Well, it's a little bit embarrassing,
Uh-oh.
but I have been playing a couple hours of Kingdoms of Amalur.
Oh boy!
Reckoning.
I saw that. Now
yeah.
that is an ARPG throwback, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's good. I love that game.
It's pizzassed. And other than that, I recently picked up the Xbox Games Pass, which included the newly released Crackdown 3. So I'll probably play that.
There you go.
A couple pals and get in there and Terry Crews all over the place.
There you go. That sounds like a plan right there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, so I think for me, the next couple of weeks is just going to be a lot more. Steph and I are still playing Resident Evil 5. We took a little break, but we're gonna get back to that here shortly. So, in between Resident Evil 5 and The Witcher, and then maybe a little bit of Octopath Traveler kind of on in the background. That's probably going to be the games that are going to take up the most of my time here in the next couple of weeks. I don't expect to finish anything in the next 2 weeks, though, because most of these games are pretty long. So I'll be talking about those at the next ATACS. And speaking of ATACS, you guys have been listening to us. We have been adults talking about cool stuff. This has been episode 53. We will be back in your feed in about 2 weeks, and we're going to talk about more cool stuff then. So tune in and take a listen. Thanks.